everybody. My name's Alice Tynan, and I'm absolutely delighted to be hosting this book club, Northern Beaches Mums night. We have our wine, we have our tea, and joining me is obviously the star of the show. We have Tori Haschka, who is the author of Grace Under Pressure, and the book we are all here to talk about. We are really, really excited to spend an hour chatting about all the things and looking through the technology as Tori is doing right now. Sorry. I do have a question if we can ask people, if we're able to ask people questions, or we're able to, you guys are able to let us know if you've read the book. So maybe what we can do to start off is like thumbs up if you've read it. Not that we're going to do spoilers today, but you can just let us know. And what we'll do is just kind of spend the hour having a chat about motherhood, about the book, about the inspiration, about the perspiration that goes into writing a book, and just generally have a good time. So why don't we, while people are joining, why don't we start off by talking about our Northern Beaches cred.
Okay.
Let's start with you. What's your Northern Beaches cred?
Okay.
Northern Beaches mum cred.
Okay. Northern Beaches mum's cred. I feel like I don't know, do I need like a postcode tattoo or something?
We need, we're both wearing Lululemon.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
So, and I've got a mum bun, so
yeah,
I'm like
buns.
2 for 2.
We did, I mean, we were going to wear real clothes, but then we decided it was 8 o'clock and we just put the kids to bed, and this is what we need to be wearing right now. I have lived on the Northern Beaches since 2004. No, 2014. God, my kids aren't that old. 2014. So, had a boyfriend who lived on the Northern Beaches as a teenager.
Do I know this?
Yeah, maybe.
Okay.
Ali and I have known each other our entire lives, and I have recently conscripted her to come and join us on the Northern Beaches. I had a boyfriend who lived on the Northern Beaches as a teenager and used to wag school a little bit.
Okay.
And come and spend the days at Queenscliff. And kind of fell in love with it then. So, yes, moved here when Will, my son, was 1 year old.
You told your husband the boyfriend story, right?
Sure.
Okay, sure. All right,
sure.
fine.
Sure. I mean, it's not a hard place to convince people to want to move to.
Right.
But we had never lived on the beaches before. We are sort of recent imports to it, but had spent years traveling the world, and really there is no more beautiful place. So it made so much sense to A, live here, B, raise kids here, and C, set a book here, because there's a lot of nice things to write about. Really.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, my Northern Beaches mum credibility is very limited. Apologies, everybody. I moved here, a month or 2 ago?
Yeah, we can pretend it's a bit longer.
Yeah. So I've been living over in Dublin for the last 7 years, moved back about 18 months ago, and was kind of hunting around Sydney, returning to Australia as a mum, going, oh, where do I fit in Sydney now? It's a bit different. And then, yes, Tori, oldest friend, was like, just kept sending me houses. Like, just legitimately, the campaign was real, and it was like, let's do this. And we were looking in really different areas, but Tori was just consistently being like, what about this? What about this? And so she won, basically. You're welcome, / I'm sorry. But we love it here. It's wonderful. It's just it's such a lovely community. And yes, I feel like with the mum bun and the grey roots, I'm like full Northern Beaches mum material. You guys are probably much better cloth than I am. I said I was going to bring haggard mum realness to this, and that's what I'm doing. So yeah.
I mean, the fact that we have children that are asleep right now feels like a massive.
You totally just jinxed that.
Oh, sorry.
But you did mention traveling the world, and what I didn't say in the intro is that this is Tori's first, is a debut novel, but she is by no means a novice writer nor an unpublished one. I actually have, because I saw it upstairs, her first cookbook, Suitcase and a Spatula, and this was pre-kids.
Oh yeah, this was when we got to travel, right?
This was when, I think I came over to London to like live with you for a good few weeks while this was being incubated. But why don't we start with what it's like to go from, writing cookbooks to writing to writing novels?
Well, it's like writing a cookbook is great in the sense that no matter what happens at the end of the day, you've got dinner sorted.
Good point.
So, that's one easy win for it. And the writing the cookbooks fed neatly into writing Grace Under Pressure because the protagonist of Grace Under Pressure is a food writer. So that was a very easy dovetail for it. I was like, okay, I know how to write cookbooks. Maybe I can squeeze some of this into it. But there is a real, there's a risk in writing a novel that you are spending a lot of time putting words on a page that somebody might not read, somebody might not buy, somebody might not like, and that at the end of the day, it's just.
And that's more risky than a cookbook.
I think so.
Just kind of buy it and leave them on the like they stunt buy them, right? And I'm going to cook them that one day.
But also, even if the process of creating a cookbook, you're feeding your family for a year or so because you're recipe testing each day. At the end of a photo shoot, you've got food to be able to share around. At the end of a day of writing a novel, you're like, well, I came up with some good metaphors today, darling. So that was my day.
And what's for dinner?
And what's for dinner? Yeah. What's for dinner? So Grace felt like a nice way to combine, the love of mine, which is food, which is probably the fifth major character in Grace Under Pressure is the food in it, with the reality of it's much harder sometimes when you have small people in your lives to do the job that you used to love all the time.
Yes.
And for me, going on food shoots was harder with small people. It was just being in Australia. But anyway, so that was sort of a natural segue for me. But certainly, I never really thought of myself as a novelist. So that's been.
Has it changed?
I think it does.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I don't know.
This is real.
Yeah, that's real.
This is real.
Also, what's real is the second one, which is due momentarily.
If anyone follows Tori on Instagram, you'll see that she took the weekend to deep dive, do some epic structural changes, and I want to get to that. I kind of the way that I'm framing this conversation in my head is I'll talk about the inspiration. I want to talk about the perspiration because just even writing the book must be like birthing a child. And I want to leave. Yeah, I want to leave. Obviously, if those of you who've given me the thumbs up that you've read the book, you'll know that obviously Facebook and our digital lives features very heavily in the novel. So I want to leave that like Chekhov's gun to the end, so we can dig into the power of community as it features in the book and as it features in all of our lives. So if we start with inspiration, and we've got a bit of context on, you as a food writer, you as a novelist, let's go back to who did you draw from to write Grace?
Okay, so I have this theory that everybody has a novel. Everybody does. Everybody does. And I think it's just inclination and time. I'm sure if we all got put in hotel quarantine without our children for a couple of weeks, that, a lot of us, when we ran out of Netflix, might get around to starting to tinker around.
Probably just sleep for those couple of weeks, but sure.
Yeah, okay.
Cool.
Let's assume that the sleep deprivation is paid down by
that
point. But I think that novels, and particularly first novels, come about when people have an idea that just will not leave them alone. It's an idea that just taps them on the shoulder. And the one for Grace it was just something that was whispered to me a lot by women on the Northern Beaches, by, my friends, my peers, the women I know and I love, who were just finding it hard because it is hard sometimes. It's just really hard. And the thing that they would whisper is after they had found themselves in some kind of calamity, they'd been in hospital with a child with croup, they'd have a spouse that was overseas, they'd all come down with chicken pox. There's some, choose from the buffet of, of childhood illnesses which you would like to collect. Do not pass go, do not collect $200. Hand, foot, and mouth for you. And it was in those moments that women would be rescued in some sense by their female friends. Somebody would step up for them. There would be bolognaise that would be left on the doorstep. There would be an offer to collect a child from daycare. There would be It'd be the text message in the morning of, hey, darling, how was last night? Are you okay? Like, can I do anything for you? And what would come after that was women saying to each other, in this kind of sly little way, what if we lived in a village of women? Like, what would that be like? And none of this is because the men in our lives are necessarily problematic, and saying it up front, like, my poor husband, like he's being a real trooper about this book.
Is he having a dad party right
Yeah.
now?
Yeah. But it's more that those notions of the traditional village have been lost to us. We are not supposed to raise our kids alone, and trying to do it on our own is really hard. So what I wanted the book to be was that real celebration of female friendship, and to show the ways and the stories about how women in these years of our lives, where we are set adrift from everything that we knew about ourselves and the stuff that we were proudest of about ourselves, that's a cat, not a baby.
That's a cat. Sorry.
When we're set adrift from that, and how it is that we find this new sense of who we are through the friendships that we develop.
Yeah, I think that, oh my goodness. She's a Burmese, and I think we broke her brain when we brought her over from Ireland. So we'll see how that goes. I might have to throw her outside, and you can just bam to our friends over here. I think I can't plus one that enough. I reckon I was telling a friend a while ago, I don't think I felt like myself again until about 18 months after my baby was born. And it was like, oh, because you have to go through the looking glass, right? My name's Alice, but yeah, go through the looking glass and then experience it from the other side. Oh my goodness, that's really annoying. Shall I go and put her outside?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
While I do that, why don't you talk about the literary inspirations? Like who were you, like what culture were you consuming while you conceived of these women in this beautiful commune?
Okay, so I'd still put her up.
Okay, I'm gonna do that. Hang on a second.
I'm also allergic to cats. So for me, I don't think you can really love like women's fiction Leanne Moriarty has obviously been a huge influence on the way that I write, and mainly by the way that she is able to show the complexities of women. We are not all one thing. Nobody is all good. Nobody is all bad. Everybody comes to the party with their own histories and baggage, and the way that they play off against each other was a big influence. One thing that I have done in Grace, and that I've also bashing my head against the wall in the sequel, or the world expansion of it, is tell the story through 4 spiraling perspectives. So it's the voices of 4 women. If I try and do that again, can somebody please like sit me down and pour me a large glass of wine and just be like, don't, that's quite hard to do.
Again.
Yeah. You don't need to do that. But I love it in Grace, and I love it because it tells the diversity of experiences. There is Grace, who is sort of, a wellness warrior, and sort of through her we get to see, some of the stuff that is really quite rotten within the core of, wellness communities. Some of it's great, but some of it can be quite toxic and poisonous to our senses of self. Through Petra, her best friend, we get to see, some of the social issues that really live behind the doors of very nice houses in the Northern Beaches that are not, that are experienced by women all over Australia. We also get to see the way that women just love each other, just really,
back each other,
when the chips are down. Through Shelley, who is Grace's newest friend, and the scene where Grace meets Shelley is one of my favourite ones, because it's at the very beginning, and it's at the the Northern Beaches market, which I have used a bit of artistic license and positioned from Rat Park down to somewhere in freshwater. But it's at the northern. It's on the bouncy trampoline at the Northern Beaches market, and it's what happens when a post-birth pelvic floor meets a trampoline, and that's
hectic.
That's hectic. That's hectic. But it's also about the way that there is this biological shorthand that women who have had children have with each other. You know, you say that to me, and I'll just be like, "Well, that's brave, but best of luck for that." You know, you take your kid to a birthday party and jumped, and they're like, "Mum, come have a jump," and I'm like, "No, Mummy's just gonna have a coffee here. That's fine. Off you go."
We say it's a 2-jump limit.
Yeah, two jump max. And so, but what I love about Shelley and Grace is that it is, I mean, for one, they have this great thing where the opening line between the two of them is after this calamity, whereas Grace just says to Shelley, she's like, "I think we need cheese." And, you know, I don't know how many other people have this kind, but I just have, you know, I have cheese eating friendships, you know, when a lot of important conversations are had over cheese. But Grace and Shelley also offers a bit of a generational perspective on it, because Shelley's a bit younger, she's more of a digital native, and she's also able to look at Grace and Petra and just roll her eyes a bit, because I think there is a level of paranoia and anxiety that comes with being a woman in your 30s, desperately trying to hold career and family together. And Shelley's a bit like, I think you're making it harder than it needs to be, girl.
Yeah, so it's a bit of a mirror back to them.
Yeah. And then there's my favourite character out of it, which I think is a lot of people's favourite character, which is Christine, which is the next door neighbour that I think we would all secretly like to have, you know, the wise old woman who lives next door, who will pop, you know, in the beginning they don't have much of a relationship, but over time, you know, that is what the village is. That is about that intergenerational connection. It's about having the grandmothers, you know, whether they're real grandmothers or honorary grandmothers, who can provide some of the wisdom that we need. And her big thing is, she's a feminist economist, and her big bugbear is about the load of unpaid labour, which I think we can all agree is a bit problematic.
Actually, I was going to say, I think for me, what I really love about the introduction of her, and we won't go into spoilers, but it is part of the intro, is that she's writing this economic paper about unpaid labor, and so it does give you that world setting and that context setting of saying, like, oh my goodness, like the amount of, what is it, the GDP that care
economy,
actually, the care economy is massive, and it's literally because we don't value it as a society. That
just because it doesn't earn a salary doesn't mean that it isn't work.
Right.
Doesn't mean that it's not, you know, doesn't have value to it. And I think, if I was going to be honest, that was one of the things that I have really chafed against as a mother. That the work that has been the hardest for me, the most physically grafting, that has taken the greatest toll on my body, and sometimes, you know, on your emotional capacities. I don't know how many people have had to, you know, wrangle 3-year-olds having full flight tantrums while having a newborn strapped to their chest in the middle of the beaches market. But, you know, that kind of work earns you the least, and sometimes feels like it has the least social cachet attached to it, which, you know, there's something rotten in the state of capitalism when that is how women feel.
1000%. Yeah, I was just listening to the Hysteria podcast, and granted, an American perspective, and obviously friends over there are still battling through lockdowns and, you know, crazy COVID, and what they were talking about was care as infrastructure, given Joe Biden's new infrastructure plan, and just saying, you know, there's this joke that like everything is infrastructure under Joe Biden, but I do think that it does allow you to put language around it that has economic weight when you call it infrastructure. Because it turns out that during the pandemic, when you rip a whole lot of women out of the workforce, or you try and make them balance, you know, work and childcare in the home during lockdown. Sorry if this is triggering for all of you Northern Beaches people who got locked down again over Christmas. I wasn't part of the community yet, so. But you know, my point stands, right? That it is infrastructure, but it's not given the same economic value.
Amen.
Yeah. So that's part of the inspiration was a clear feminist economic agenda.
Yes.
Great.
Yes. I mean, there are certainly I mean, one of the loveliest endorsements that I got for the book is from Sally Hepworth, who's a novelist who I respect for answer. And she said it was an ode to the power of women. And there was part of me where I was like, well, oh my gosh, thank you. Like that was what I wanted to be able to do, was to shine a bit of a light on the fact that there should be medals of valor for motherhood. Like really, when you think about what women we know go through on a daily basis, you know, there should be statues. Why are there plinthers to people who have fought in? I mean, I'm not degrading, you know, the efforts of those who have done other forms of service, but in terms of physical sacrifice, like there are plenty of women who've been through births that there should be statues. There should be statues in recognition of, you know, their bravery.
Totally. I mean, do you worry that it's a bit of an echo chamber?
I have heard that there are some, you know, I have some of the loveliest things that I've got since the book has been out there is firstly the messages and the photos that I get of women who are hiding from their children and reading the book.
I feel like that needs to become a series.
Yeah, who are just like, so the children are watching a little bit more iPad today and I'm reading the book. But also, you know, there are some dudes who are reading it and who are messaging me and who are reading it and then having conversations with their wives about recognizing, you know, some of the things that we think but we don't say. And we don't say because we don't necessarily feel comfortable about it, but it's about the toll that it can take on our bodies and the toll that it can take on our mental health. And them getting a little bit more empathy about, you know, what that feels like.
Getting work to it. Well, speaking of tolls, let's talk about the perspiration of actually birthing this book. You mentioned, and we talked about the cookbook, you mentioned that was kind of your way into grace, but a little bit of a reveal is that there was a lot more cooking and cookery in the first version. So talk us through the perspiration of getting to this from your first draft.
Well, in the very beginning, so
let me pour you some more wine while you do so.
Okay, great. So one of the things that tracks through the books is a series, is a project of Graces, which is, you know, all those pregnancy apps which sort of tell you each week, like first your baby's a poppy seed, then it's a blueberry, then it's a plum.
You've made one of those apps.
Yeah, exactly. So no, I did.
Okay.
So during both of my pregnancies, as sort of as a hobby project, I developed a recipe for each week of the pregnancy. And there's an app that exists for free on the App Store called From Poppy Seed to Pumpkin, with sort of a whole food recipe for each of those weeks. And so I really cheated and tried to shoehorn that into Grace quite a bit. So in the very beginning, there was a recipe for every single chapter of the book as it traced Grace's pregnancy. Spoiler alert, but you find out really at the end of the first chapter. So Grace is pregnant with her third child. Not really planned. And so there were recipes all the way through it. And when I first got my agent, and I sent it to her, she was like, I think the concept's great. Like, that sounds very interesting to me. But the recipes have to come out because they pull you out of the narrative flow. So we've taken a lot of those recipes out and they now live in the back of the book as sort of an addendum for them there. But that was a really, you know, that was a big hurdle for me as an author because I was using them as a crutch.
I was going to say, it was a safety net
that
for
was
you.
That was a real safety net. I was like, this is where I feel, and then it meant that I was like, okay, no, it has to just be about these women and what do they need, what do they want, what is getting in their way, and how do they come up against each other and the rest of their environment in order to get what they want. And what they want is really just to be able to be happy, healthy mums. But
seen and validated.
You know.
Don't we all?
And all of that's a bit hard.
So that's really interesting. So you had to go through a process of stripping back, taking away your cooking crutch to reveal the characters. And then that was with your agent, and then you onboarded with your editor.
Yes.
And they say in any creative pursuit, you've got to kill your darlings. Like, how many died?
Oh, it was a lot.
Okay.
It was a lot.
Oh, dear.
No. I mean, I think in the end there were probably 27 drafts of Grace.
That was going to be one of my questions. Yeah, how many V final, final, really final this time?
But it's really, I mean, it's as the first fiction that I've done, it's a really fascinating process because you know, unlike non-fiction, where a lot of the times non-fiction like cookery books is sold on a concept. So it's a book proposal. It's based on how big your platform is, what your ability to spruik and sell a book is, and how great the idea is. But you really only have to write. You only have to give them 2 or 3 sample chapters a lot of the time in order to get a book
great.
deal.
I'll get this.
You're like, it's fine. I can do that. But particularly for debut fiction, you know, they want to see that it works before they're going to give you money for it, and before they're going to agree to publish it. You know, and the first couple of chapters might be great, but you need to be able to bring that home. You need to be able to. You need to be able to finish that. So you know, writing it all and was a bit of a labour of love and an experiment. And then I had to go and try and find an agent for it because the agent that I had previously was a non-fiction agent. And so that was just a process of 2 glasses of wine and Dutch courage and cold pitching people on email.
Successfully.
And luckily, luckily my delightful agent, Catherine Draper, emailed me back. She said, I like the concept. That's great. Okay, super. Send it to me. And I was like, okay, you better finish off that last chapter then. Send it off.
I actually remember when you got the reply, you're like, holy shit.
Better finish that.
Oh, God.
And then there's a process where they, I worked with her and the people in her team to refine the book, and they had some great editorial feedback. Take the recipes out, include some other sources of conflict, bring the women together earlier on, and then, and then there had to be justice for all of the characters at the end. You have to get to, if you're going to have 4 characters and you're going to have 4 different perspectives, you have to make sure that each one of them gets their dues. So that took a while to figure out, because, and then also there's the things that they're like, so some of these characters just disappear halfway through.
Didn't you get some names mixed up?
Yeah, I totally got
Wasn't there a daughter named?
Oh yeah. Some of the daughters, and then naming them is really hard because you don't want to accidentally, give a character that's problematic the name of somebody that you know. So, and I think there were some that slipped in. I'm really sorry, but I promise none of the names are based on anybody real. So yeah, I had to finish up all of that, and then they take it out. And then selling books is a lot like selling houses. So they take it out sort of on spec into all these different publishing houses. They all look at it, they decide, and then if there's enough of them that are interested in it, then it goes to auction, and that's kind of scary and fun. And I was really lucky that Simon and Schuster are delightful, and so they scooped in and grabbed it in a preempt before the auction, and so that's been. And then after that, there are some more rounds of changes. It goes to professional readers. That's really a job. How amazing is that? That's a job for someone. And then copy editors, and proofreaders, and then finally it goes out into the world. And that's a very strange day.
Yeah, I was going to say, and I was talking about perspiration in terms of the edit and the structural process, but let's just talk about the sweat of launching a book and wanting it to resonate with society. Like, I know that that's something that you took really seriously in your book launch. You talked a lot about being fueled by like anger as well as love, because of what's happening to women in our society.
Yeah.
So, I know that, you sweated the journey, but also the reception as well, right? Like wanting it to connect with readers, wanting it to connect with, like, to say something valuable about society as well. So talk a little bit about that.
I think that, like, some of the stuff that, spoiler alert, some of the stuff that the book does touch on is, it is fiction, but it definitely does dwell into some darker territory that, that I know, and I know a lot of other of my friends and contacts on the beaches know of, and, postnatal anxiety and depression is real. Like, that's pretty full on. And so being able to delve into that sort of grist, being able to, really look at what are the implications of that, where are the places that you can go for help. Obviously everybody has their own path to treatment for it, but one of the shining lights in the book is the Gidget Foundation. DigiHouse, who now have a facility in Manly, but they're also available online and in North Sydney. And quite honestly, I've been really lost particularly after my second child, without Digi Foundation. And so being able to write about that stuff, is a form of therapy in itself. That is quite it's quite therapeutic
quite cathartic.
Quite cathartic to sort of to crack that open and be like, okay, let's go back there. Like, what did some of that feel like? And some of the loveliest stuff has been, friends of mine, women that I know peripherally, sort of sliding into my Instagram DMs and just being like, me too.
We have one right now. I've never felt so seen as I did by this book. Tori, you nailed it.
Oh.
That's a glass of wine in after a day that started at 4:45.
Yeah.
I don't think she can take compliments, everyone. So keep coming. I'll read them. But I'm not sure I can pass them on to start crying. But yeah, no, I think that's kind of what I'm wanting to talk about, like Grace in the Wilds, right? Like, okay, so we've been through the inspiration, we've been through the perspiration. Grace is now in the wild. What are the lessons learned? Like, what are you drawing from? You mentioned, people sliding into DMs, but what's the most resonant lessons learned for you?
I think, it really has been so lovely hearing other people's stories and that sense that even the things that I put in there, there's one of the things that works in the book as almost like a Greek chorus for it is this Facebook group, fictional.
We can go there. I was
is a fictional Facebook group called The Beaches Mums, and in The Beaches Mums, there are lots of people asking lots of questions. What's the best place to go and get a tongue tie cut? Is it okay to send chia seeds into school in a nut-free policy?
All these things I don't know. So.
Anybody know where we can get cut pumpkin from?
The cut apples being the sliced pre-cut sliced apples being an issue. Yeah.
But one of the other things that's in there is the series of confessions of like, what are the most bonkers things that you have done when you have been sleep deprived? And I think that in the book there's about 9 or 10 of them listed. 5 of them are real from me. Like,
it's like the truth lie thing.
Truth and a lie. Truth and a lie. And then some of the others are ones that that I've heard, and we all have done some really bonkers. People who have $900 prams that get left on the side of the road because you're too tired, and you will just drive off without it.
You got the baby in.
You got the baby. Yeah.
You missed a step.
Yeah.
Cool.
It's I honestly have such a vivid memory of trying to walk up the escalator, not the escalator, but the moving walkway at the mall near Woolworths, but walking up it the wrong way. Just walking up, getting on it with a pram truck, and thinking so clearly to myself, like, when did the world get this hard? Like, why is it so hard to walk out? And I was like, because I'm going the wrong way. Because I'm just too tired. I probably shouldn't be driving right now because I haven't slept enough. And so hearing the stories from other people, I think that there's a real, there's a sense, there's a great sense of that, like, we're all joined in this collective madness. That is very comforting. And everybody might pretend to be holding it all together and nailing it, but there is just so much humour and grace in being able to admit what is hard.
To be a bit messy, right? Yeah, that's what I think. That was my big takeaway from reading Grace. It gives you permission to say out loud the stuff. Like you said, the inspiration came from kind of people whispering it to you, soft voice, like, oh, what if we just hung out? Because, like, that would be really handy. Yeah. Or, I'm just so freaking tired. And, the things that you text to your friends, the complaints that you make, I just need to vent, or I just need someone who understands. Like, Grace gives you the permission to have those conversations out loud.
Yeah. And I missed out on having a mother's group the first time around because I was working.
So did I.
Yeah, Ali was in Dublin. I was working on a cookbook in the eastern suburbs, and I was like, I don't have time for that.
With a hectic schedule.
I was like, who's got time for that? No, I have to work and feed the baby. It's fine. And I think because I missed that, there was this real hunger that I had to find that kind of connection with other people. I mean, in the end, I ended up stealing somebody else's mother's group. Just being like, hi.
Co-opting,
Yeah,
hi.
just like, hi, I'll now be part of it. My kid's 6 months older, but that's fine. I'll be part of yours. It's fine. So that's been one of the really nice things about seeing it out, is just having those kind of conversations with people about what's hard.
Do you think it's a bit more in the ether at the moment? I'm thinking about Working Mums, the Canadian show on Netflix, and I'm blanking because I'm tired. What's the Aussie one that's amazing that actually starts with the woman sleep training? And I would watch it in Dublin. I was like, no, too real, and I just hit pause for a while, and I came back to it like 6 months later.
With Noni Hazelhurst as the Mother's Group
come
host.
on, people.
To somebody.
Anyway. Blanking on it, amazing show, but it does feel like you've released Grace at a time when we are starting to have these conversations in a bit more creatively and a bit more publicly, and a way that is getting funded on Netflix. And so I'll ask you who you're going to cast for the film or TV adaptation later, but do you think that we are now there is some movement in the culture in terms of being able to at least have these conversations?
Yeah, and I think that I mean, there is a whole also sort of internet subculture of like messy wine mom stuff, and and listen, I have no problem with but also I think that there is a middle ground between having to present that sort of veneer of perfection, which is what Grace is chasing up against the whole time, of not being able to admit your foibles, of having to present this, very perfect. This is my bento box lunch for my children. These are the cookies I make from scratch every day with, oats and dates and love. Versus messy wine mom, I don't care.
You're right. There seems there's polars.
That there used to be, that you have to live in one of those sort of polarities. Whereas I think everybody lives in a combination of the messy middle, and that's what I love, and that's the bit about the idea of a commune that I love the most, because I think
recruitment.
Because I think you do. I think and I think instinctively we gravitate towards groups of friends where each of us brings something else to the table. I mean, I would honestly pay somebody in dinners for 2 weeks to make an Easter hat for my child.
Yeah.
To just
we have a friend who does
is a craft
mum, and Maddie, we love you, and it's like, how much can we outsource?
Yeah, so if I could outsource the crafting to anyone, that would be the dress-up costumes, the book week costume. Anything. I will pay somebody in hot meals for 2 weeks to never have to make one of those costumes again. And then by the same token, I need somebody else who has the enthusiasm to track down where is the best swimming school to go to, like what's the best swimming club, like what's the football team that he should be signing up for, when do I need to do that, somebody to tap me on the shoulder and say, FYI, like Nippers was like 2 weeks ago, you really should have signed up for that, to be able
the life admin
person, one or the sporting one, I think if we're going to recruit the perfect commune, everybody needs to have a little bit of a skills division there.
But that's to kind of dive into, pick up Chekhov's gun, to talk about the Facebook group in the novel. And again, we won't spoil it, but it is, you're absolutely right. It is the Greek chorus of the novel, and it provides both those moments of reality, moments of hilarity, fights, angst, craziness. But what is it? But it also, what you were just saying, it is that commune virtually, right? Like it is that community.
These days, we live with a village that is virtual. Yeah. And I think that was so obvious last year as well, when so many of us were really physically cut adrift from extended family as well. But particularly, this is where we go for connection. This is where we go for information these days. But with that also comes the chance of, this is sometimes where you go for judgment. And that can be hard, and we've all accidentally stepped in it at some point or another, unless you're just a lurker and you don't say anything, you just sit there and read everybody else's stuff.
I'm gonna cop to that just because I'm new, so I'm just learning. Sorry.
But I think it is one of those things that, it's very hard on social media. Um, we all stuff up at some points in time, partly because our filters are down, because we're doing it quickly, because we're distracted, because we're coming from our own perspectives of things. Also because sometimes, you just accidentally are snarky because
That's the way it comes off.
That's the way it comes off. But also, it's much easier for things to appear sarcastic when they're written down than it is, if you get somebody's human time for it. So being able to sort of delve into that was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. But I really think that for me in particular, like I value, online communities so much as a vestibule for information more than anything. That's where if I need to find out, where do I find the best immunologist for my dairy allergic daughter? Like that's where I'm going to be Googling.
Yeah, it is,
that's where I'm going.
It's targeted hive mind. Right?
Yeah,
you can go to the community of people who get it, know it, and
have been there before,
and it's so generous with their time and their expertise as well. Like that's what I find amazing that we all, as time poor as we are, can contribute to the community. Yeah. But it is, I suppose, it is a double-edged sword, right?
Yeah, I think, and I think that it's obviously taken to a heightened degree in Grace because that's what drama is. But I think there is a degree of digital surveillance that we are all living under that would just make our parents heads spin. And that's been one of the really interesting things too. Is that some of the women who have read the book and who have reached out to me are from my mother's generation, my stepmother's generation. And I think, some of them just turn around and say, I'm really glad I'm not a mother in 2020. That seems a lot harder than it was in 1980. And I think some of that is because we all feel like we are on show a lot more. There's the sense that if I do something that's problematic, is somebody going to see me do it? Is somebody going to record me do it? Is somebody going to dog me in? Whereas I think everybody got away with being a lot more anonymous in the past. There was no digital footprint. The internet was not around and wasn't written in pen in 1982.
But I would wager that the judgy was still there, right? Like definitely. So yeah, our mums are like besties, and definitely some wines and some judgy happened back in the day.
Yeah,
and
maybe the judgy happened, but I don't think anybody put the judgy up on a wall for somebody.
Yeah, it was. I suppose. It was more in the private sphere than the public sphere. Yeah,
and maybe that's it. But also, there's a whole bunch of stuff from 1980s parenting that just would not fly today.
Wooden
at
spoon.
all.
The wooden spoon.
I mean, sure, if you want to go there. But also, I just think we used to get just left in cars.
Good point.
While the parents would pop into Bunnings for a while. I mean, I'm not dobbing in my parents. No, mum and dad were great. But, that was a fairly common occurrence. And I'm sure that, if somebody left a kid for an extended period outside Bunnings in Warringah Mall, then there would probably be a post on Northern Beaches Mums.
There you go.
About it. And I think that we have anxieties these days that did not resonate for them. I think, understandably, they didn't parent in the pandemic. There's that. They didn't live with the kind of eco-anxiety that a lot of us have. That real fear of what is happening to the planet.
Which we feel very acutely here in Australia with bushfires, floods.
Totally. Yeah. I don't think that my mother's experience of kindergarten included having to carry a portable air filter into the classroom so her asthmatic child could attend school. There are the paranoia about the amount of plastics that we put in lunch boxes, the concerns that we have about if we do, what's that going to, what's the teacher going to say? Am I living up to the expectation? There's layers of things that I think.
But let's pick up on that a little bit because I think that goes into performative motherhood.
Yes.
And there's a line early on in Grace when she adopts Shelley where she says, the line is that she's a better mother in public or with
Grace was always a better mother with an audience.
With an audience, and that talk about feeling seen. I was like, yeah, I know what that feels like. Particularly if you're having a really rough day, it's really nice to like have someone else to both vent to, but then you up your game.
Oh,
a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. So performative motherhood, I feel like is a big conversation, but it is something that Facebook groups enable as well, or kind of facilitate is the performance of virtue signaling about how great you are or what you've done. And I guess that's the double-edged sword of all of the amazing community that you also receive.
But I also think that if there is performative motherhood, if there is virtue signaling, that is happening by women who are working hard and not feeling validated by society for the work that they do on a daily basis. If we were validated properly, if we were acknowledged, if we were respected, if we were paid for the work that we did, then people would not feel the need to necessarily grandstand so much about it, because you would feel that internal satisfaction for it.
Yeah.
So
you would get validation, so you wouldn't need to seek it out yourself.
And also, even if it's not just from society, I mean, it takes a long time for a child necessarily to be verbal enough to acknowledge the work that you are doing for it.
Yeah.
And even if you have kids that are old enough, it's not necessarily a child's job to thank their parents for the work that they do, but it is work. It is work. So but I think performative parenting is a very easy trap to fall into. I know that I've been guilty of it. I look back now at some of the Instagram posts that I used to do about my children's lunch boxes, and I want to go back and smack.
Do you want to issue an apology here?
I just want to put a public apology. I want to smack me. I just want to be like, that was not necessary. That was not. But part of that was me. That was one of the ways that I was able to express my. That was a gesture of affection for me. That was love language for me. Being able to prepare foods that catered to the needs of my kids was something that I could do. But also, it was a way of me feeling like I was like, look at the work I'm doing. Like this is work.
Yeah.
But really, I'm sorry. Like, if it made anybody feel shit, I'm really sorry.
I just don't even. Yeah, I don't even try. One thing I wanted to talk about in terms of, or two things actually. One was you refer to the digital crutch and our phones as something that we're all tethered to. I haven't watched that documentary on Netflix again. I'm blanking on all my names, which is bad. That was it, the social problem or something?
The social dilemma.
The social dilemma that we're all supposed to watch and then never use our phones again. But it does strike me that something that Grace talks about and that we all experience is just how lonely motherhood can be. And there is something immediately gratifying about connecting with your virtual community.
Yeah.
And but when does it become a digital crutch versus when is it a healthy community to be part of?
I think I probably need a therapist.
Which end are you on, the digital crutch?
Oh, I'm sure I use it completely as a digital crutch. And if you were to ask me some of the things that I really found problematic about my parenting, it would be the use of my phone. Absolutely. And there's a really strange panic that you get sometimes if you can't find your phone, and a real trigger for quite a rational rage. And it took me a long time to figure out what that was about. For me, it was partly because I spent a lot of time parenting on my own when my husband was overseas for extended periods. And so the phone really was the connection to the outside world. And also, with kids with croup and asthma and things like that, not being able to find the phone meant that if something went wrong in the middle of the night, then I couldn't contact somebody. So the phone really did become sort of a buoyancy vest for me a lot. But it is a slippery slope, and so suddenly you're like, I need it because just in case, and then you're like, I need it because I would like to check Northern Beaches Mums, or I'd like to check my Instagram, or
we love our kids, but they're really boring sometimes. Let's be honest. My kid's amazing, but when I was doing it full time, I got bored. And so I would have an AirPod.
You just lost 5 people. They just logged off.
Sorry, friends. Because, it's one of those things that
Yeah.
I would have great times, and I would have times where I would want to be like listening to a podcast
Well, that's
or
why
calling you or doing something else.
that's why parenting in a village is
There you
easy,
go.
because we were not designed to do this in isolation. It is much easier to do it when you have multiple voices and perspectives and sets of hands.
Yeah. Although, what do we think about the Michael Leunig cartoon? What was it, 2019, of the mother looking down on her phone and the baby's out of the pram?
That just made me want to scream.
Right?
That cartoon made me want to scream so much.
I thought about it in the context of this kind of topic because there is a reality that we use digital crutches, but I just thought that cartoon was so out of bounds.
Well, I mean, one of the things that I hope works about Grace is that satire works when it punches up and it's not punching down. So the people who are the source of humour in Grace are within a position of privilege anyway. And I just don't think that a 70-year-old white man without small children needs to be punching down on mothers in this day and age. That who knows? Maybe she was on her phone looking up the number for the Gidget Foundation because she had paralyzing postnatal anxiety and had finally got the courage that day to look up where she could go for help. Or maybe she was doing her shopping, or maybe she had a friend who was having a heart attack. We all look at our phones for different reasons, and we also spend a lot of time looking at our children.
Oh yes. Oh, I'm the person who would have a hard day with my kid, get him down, and then spend an hour looking at photos.
Yeah, totally.
I was just like, what am I doing? Just stop it for just a second. But no, I do think it's an interesting and obviously very topical and powerful conversation about our relationship with our virtual communities and our phones. But it is one that, when I think Grace tackles, as you say, with humor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I hope it comes across with warmth and with affection of it. That Grace is, so appreciative of the virtual community that she's part of, but also, quite conscious that it's problematic.
Yeah,
at times.
and that it brings out the performative mother in her for good, and also for not so good.
For not so good.
Yeah.
For not so good.
But something that I think clearly has so much love and affection in it is the other character of the Northern Beaches itself.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about what it was like to fictionalize this glorious piece of earth that we all call home.
Well, I think one of the things one of the reasons why I really want to, there's such a rich history of books that have been set in freshwater anyway. I mean, if you go back and you look at Fiona Higgins' The Mother's Group, that is a masterpiece of the genre, and Fiona has been so kind and supportive of the book as well. But what I wanted to tap into is the juxtaposition between physical paradise and the Northern Beaches is physical paradise, and the darkness, and that even in paradise there is darkness that happens behind closed doors because of the patriarchy.
To be honest,
because there are some really problematic men, no matter where we are, because of the way women are considered and treated,
and how motherhood, aforementioned, how motherhood isn't valued as society,
and also because we're all human, and that financial privilege is not necessarily a determinant of happiness either. So just because somebody, one of the characters in there may live in a shining house with a white stone bench top kitchen, doesn't necessarily mean that her experience of motherhood is going to be easy. And so that
these assumptions that we make, setting it in an ideal
paradise.
Yeah.
So that was clearer to me. I mean, and it was fun to delve further into some of the cliches of wellness. And I'm right there.
I was going to say,
Uh,
she literally is, what did you bring me as a thank you?
well, I brought you some flowers and some wine, but also, there are recipes in the back of the book, and one of them is this date cacao or cocoa cake, which is made with oat flour and coconut oil.
And what did my husband say?
And your husband was like, "That's not real cake."
Like, why didn't you bring real cake to us?
Why didn't you bring real cake? And I was like, I mean, it's delicious. And he's like, "That's not real cake."
He called bull on your wellness, but
Yeah.
I love it, and yeah, so she lives it as well.
Yeah. So that was something that I wanted, but really, freshwater itself acts as a character
Yeah.
in the book, and there are classic locations that were a lot of fun to put in there as real, as the Harwood Diggers, as the Beaches Markets, as Berkelow.
And you actually did a lot
William
of writing
Street.
in Diggers.
I did a lot of writing
Yeah.
in the Diggers. That was somewhere where I would go and take advantage of their free Wi-Fi and sit there and get some work done up there. So yeah, it made sense for me to set it in the Beaches as opposed to doing what Leanne Moriarty did and set it in a fictionalized version of Avalon.
Yeah, there you go. And it totally is. I mean, you guys can experience it yourselves. It really is a love letter to the beaches, and just you can feel the sunshine amidst all of the drama. So we do have a couple of minutes left. If anyone wants to type in questions, I can, or compliments to make her cry. I'm happy to pass those on. But as you guys are typing, I'll ask. Mother's Day is coming up.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
What is your favorite idea of a perfect Mother's Day?
I would like some sleep. Yeah, I really like some sleep. I'm sure a lot of people like some sleep. But I love the idea of getting a book and some time to read, just being gifted time to read, and a cup of tea in bed. That would be great. And I would love to see that other women were given the same, because I think one of the other things that we tap into in the book a little bit is about the politics of access to leisure time, and that is quite fraught when you have children. And I never knew how political leisure would be until I got a sense, definitely, with one, but with two kids, yes. I don't know how people, my body, mental health, marriage would not withstand any more than two. So
fair play to all of them.
I'm in awe of those who manage more. But I would like women to be given leisure for Mother's Day. I would like women to be given leisure, not just for Mother's Day, but because they deserve it, and not be given it just to be able to take it.
I must admit, when I drive to your place, which golf course do I drive past? I always just look at the golf course and go, okay, that's hours. Just hours.
Just hours.
Like,
Just
who has hours?
Just hours.
Just like if I make a 15-minute Pilates class, I'm like running around again. And feels like I'm taking an eternity. There's something about golf right now for me. I'm just like
with a toddler that inspires rage.
Just yeah, I don't think I can even get to rage because I'm too tired. It's just wow. That's so much time. So I agree with you. I think that it's the gift of time and leisure, and to not feel like you've got to do the pile of washing, or like that you actually go away.
Or to not feel like you have to work for it. I think there's a really nasty element of feeling like that we have to work in order to deserve rest. That we're rewarded with rest. And it's like,
we need to become Italian, la dolce vita.
Yeah, that rest is necessary for life. So I think we just need to get better at taking it.
Great, not just Mother's Day, but for every day. We have someone saying they can't wait to read the second book. So why don't we end on what's next?
So what's next? So yes, we are working on the second. So the second.
I love that it's the royal we. I'm not involved in it.
Anyway, the second picks up on some of the peripheral characters in the first in Grace. So Stella, who is Grace's boss at the fictional grocery store Fresh is Best. It's Stella's story. Grace and Petra definitely turn up in the background of it. And the second one is more about the idea of how wouldn't it be great if we all had a wife? We all just need two of us. So it explores some of the seedy underbelly of au pairs and what that might look like for some people. There's a little bit of stuff about pyramid schemes. There's a little bit of stuff about social contagion. It's a work in progress.
Yes.
But Mother's Day next year.
Really? Have you got it? That's
well, that's what I think. Yeah,
that's the plan.
So about this time next year is what we're looking at for that.
Whoa! And the weekend was spent doing deep structural edits that made you happy.
Sure.
Okay.
It's a work in progress. I mean, it's work. But it's the kind of work that is great fun to do because you are never alone. In my head, on most days, there are 16 fictional women from this version of Freshwater, and trying to keep them straight is a bit of a challenge. And sometimes I have to remind myself they're not real, and sometimes I have to give myself a bit of a kick in the bum to actually talk to my real friends.
So if you see Tori around the Northern Beaches, Freshwater, and she's smiling to herself, she's probably talking to one of 16 women in her head, and just say hi and move on. Okay, we are at time, lovely people. So I wish you all for Mother's Day a copy of Grace Under Pressure. Pressure those of you in your life to get it for you for Mother's Day. It's wonderful. And thank you so much for joining us. And thank you, Tori.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Cheers.
Yay.